All right, welcome to my LinkedIn friends. Hopefully, what is being broadcast is what I'm actually doing, not from 10 minutes ago. Let me see if I can check. Tap to join. Waiting for the host to start. Oh. Hmm. Okay, I think I might actually have this up and running now. Oh, I think I might actually. Okay, it does look like it is finally working. Just looking over my shoulder to see if that's actually happening. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, if you are here with me on the LinkedIn Live. Um, I wanted to welcome you to this masterclass on unlocking your career potential and getting you from here to happy with a practical and actionable roadmap. And okay, in today's webinar, we're going to cover a couple of key steps, and those are prioritizing what's really most important to you in your career journey, scoring different roles to see the different pros and cons, really looking through the gaps in your capabilities and your ability to secure that next or ideal role. And then finally putting your plan together that's going to have you achieve that goal. Now, as a gift to you, I would love for you to download the Ultimate Career Development Toolkit. And for a short time, it is 100% free. So scan the QR code and then at checkout, use this code here. And it won't ask you for a payment method or anything. It's 100% free. And these are the resources that I will be stepping through. You don't need to download them, but I really think that they're some pretty great resources to help you make all of this very actionable. Now, if you're doing that, you might need a minute to go there and do that. Here's a larger page of the QR code and the coupon code that you can use. While you're out there, hopefully downloading that, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Hello, my name is Joanne Gates. I recently left a 30-year career at Microsoft. I started as a entry-level position as an analyst and grew through the ranks to the executive level over that time. And I will tell you that I didn't take the most direct or fastest route. I meandered around here and there and wish I had some of the resources that I've built over the years to help you get there a lot easier and faster. Through my career, I have always been a vocal advocate, especially for women in every, whether it's workplace or in different sectors, really wherever big decisions are being made, I would love for there to be an equal representation of women in those environments. And unfortunately, over the years, I've just not seen the curve of women getting into those rooms fast enough. I am a mom of two wonderful young women, both in their 20s now, and have been married for just over 30 years. And like so many others, I have also had all of the imposter syndrome, mom guilt, time management, all of the typical microaggressions and sometimes macroaggressions that an ambitious woman in my case, a corporate tech environment may face. So I really would love for you to learn from my successes, but also my failures so that, again, you can get there faster and easier than the path that I ended up taking. I've now transitioned that passion from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial space. I am now an executive business coach, again, with that ambition of helping far more women get into senior levels or above, or really just staying in the workforce and continuing to have your voice heard. I really see how big the gap is in terms of representation for women and want to do everything that I can to set a great example for my kids and give them a future that is going to be more representative of our population. All right, so let's jump in. So hopefully you have downloaded the documents, and the first one that we are going to use, and the primary one, is navigating your professional career journey PDF. And the PDF that you're downloading is fully fillable. And so I hope you take the opportunity to really use it and make this a super productive use of your time. So the first step is really just doing the brain dump, brainstorming of what are the things that are important to you when you think about your career satisfaction. I've listed a number of things at the bottom of this page and in the workbook. Things like pay and benefits are obviously usually very high on people's list, but more and more workplace flexibility has become a key priority for many people. Some folks are very clear that they want a fully remote position. Others are okay with the hybrid world, and others may love and thrive or need to be in a workplace where you're physically in an office or a hospital or bank or wherever your career aspirations are. So other things that I often hear from the clients that I work with and the folks that I would coach when I was at, in my full-time job are things like upward mobility. How do I get that next promotion? Working for a great manager and with great team members can be so important for your day-to-day mental health as well as that upward mobility. Um, Often folks talk about wanting to spend time on work that really challenges you. And others want a job that has very low stress and they can put in their hours. And then when they clock out, they are not thinking about the workplace anymore. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. Just write down what comes to mind for you. And in the next step, we're going to put it in a priority order. So hopefully you are taking some time and really thinking about what are those things that are important to you. Don't stop at just one or two. Try to fill out at least 10. Okay. So step two is taking that list of 10 and prioritizing the top six and putting them in a priority order. So now you're really going to ask yourself, is pay and benefits your number one um, priority, or are those other elements, one or more of them, much more important? Is it more important that you have a fully remote position at maybe a lower pay grade than a role that requires you to be hybrid or to potentially have to move your physical location and relocate? So what are the things in priority order that are most important to you? Okay, this is when things start getting a little bit mathy, as I like to say. But this is, I think, a very, very important step. So in the workbook and in the Excel companion, that's the second resource that's in that ultimate toolkit, you have an opportunity to list those 6 items that you've listed in priority order. So in this example, we've put in flexibility, upward mobility, pay and benefits, etc. Then the next question to ask yourself is, for the current role that you're in, if you had to rate that role on a 1 to 5 scale for that characteristic, with a 5 being the highest degree of that quality, 1 being the lowest, how do you score that current role? So in this case, this fictional person said the role that they're in, their flexibility is middle of the road. So maybe this person's definition of that is hybrid. It's somewhat flexible, but not as flexible as they would like. And that's a 3. Upward mobility, they may feel like they're in a bit of a dead end job. They've been there a long time. They're not getting the promotions or the projects that they would like to see. And so they've deemed that it is a 2. So it's on the lower end of having any upward mobility. The pay and benefits might be currently fine, a 3, but the upward mobility being a 2 may mean that the future potential for pay and benefits is less than you'd like. In this case, the person works for a great manager. They like the environment. It's okay. And the role is a manager level. And these are the 5 or 6, I should say, priorities in order that this person had identified. So the first, again, is filling out what are your characteristics. Then the second part is starting the scoring process. And so first, having an understanding of where your current role lands in terms of these scores, and then starting to look at up to 3 additional roles and seeing how you would score them. In many cases, so many of the women that I talk to, and men, frankly, as well, one of the most common scenarios is they really like their current role, but they want to become the next level up. They want a promotion, they want their boss's job, whatever that is. So they may have a very clear understanding of how these characteristics would score for these other roles. In other cases, you're just looking at job postings and you're trying to glean from that job posting as much as you can to assess this. And I understand, so it is an educated guess, maybe at best. But go through the work of finding some additional roles and then scoring them. Okay, so the next step, once you've done this, this is the page completely blank to help you step you through the steps that we're going to go through. So we just showed you an example of one already filled out, but this is what your workbook will look like. It will be completely empty, and you will see as we fill it out how this works. Okay, so what we had just done was talked about what's here on the left, filling out your numbers. And then what you'll find on the right is we've used a multiplier factor or a weighting factor for each of those priority items. And so by doing this and using a scoring method, we can then say the current role scored a 3 on flexibility, which is my highest priority, and I'm giving that a multiplier of 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. This next role, role number 1, this person is identified as a score of 5. So likely that means 100% remote. So in this case, 5 times 6 being 30. And you can see how these others score. And so next row is going to be whatever that number is times 5, and then times 3, times 3, times 4, 3, 2, 1, and you can see it. And then at the bottom, you're able to see an overall weighted score for your current role and for each of these new roles. And once you do this, it might not be too surprising to understand why you're thinking of that next position. Your current role could potentially be, and likely is, the lowest scoring role on this page. And you can further see where the disconnect is between what you're looking for and what your current role has. And then, of course, you're able to see how these other roles score and why they are attractive to you. So in this case, this person might say, oh, this new role number 3 scores the best at an 85. Now let's look at it a little bit. So it has the flexibility that I want. The upward mobility and the pay are only middle of the road, but works for a great manager, better collaborative environment, and is also a manager level. Again, these are the priorities. So that scored quite high. Now, what I'll tell you is if you look at this and go, yeah, but new rule number 3 really doesn't light my fire, I would challenge you to look back at your characteristics and in the order that you've listed them. Very likely, there is some incongruence. Maybe pay and benefits is actually higher on your list and upward mobility. And if so, the score ultimately would be different. And so it would make sense why that might not be the ideal role you want to go for. Maybe role number 1, which also scores quite high, 78. And we can look at this and see flexibility is great. Upward mobility is only a 2. Pay and benefits are better. Great manager, maybe not as much. Collaborative environment and manager. So you can see with each of these, there are always going to be different pros and cons and different trade-offs to consider. And this tool is trying to help you understand the trade-offs and really think through how you would decide if you got offers for all of these roles, which one potentially has the highest likelihood to give you the satisfaction that you want, and over the various period of time that you're considering. So I hope that makes some sense. Now, the next part of figuring out how to get where you want to go is thinking like the hiring manager. So I want you to take the same concept, but we're going to switch it up a little bit. So if you think about these different roles, now as the hiring manager, what are the different characteristics that you're looking for from the ideal candidate? So in this case, let's say it's a marketing leader. And so one of the characteristics could be, a particular degree in marketing or digital advertising or something. Another characteristic may be you're looking for a manager, so someone that has supervised others for a period of time. Other parts might be specific to, again, maybe the tech industry. Maybe you want someone who's got 10 years of experience in the gaming world, etc. So think through the skills that the hiring manager is looking for. And then similar to the scoring method that we used, now, again, as the hiring manager, what level of proficiency is the hiring manager looking for in that characteristic? So again, on the first one, it may have been someone that has a marketing degree. Now, the 1 to 5 is a 5 is potentially entry level. Yes, they have a marketing degree. They could be, 1 minute out of school or a certificate program. Or you may be looking for someone who you consider has mastered that skill and you'd give that a 5. Maybe you're looking for someone with 20 years of experience in a very particular technology. And so again, the characteristic and what level of proficiency is needed for the right candidate in these roles. Now, the step that I didn't list here, but it is in the workbook, is now that you've got a view of, okay, characteristic number 1, they want entry level, and characteristic number 2, they want midway example, and characteristic 3, again, let's say it's a manager and supervisory role, they want someone who's a 4, who's been doing this a long time. These things, this is obviously a made up example just for illustrative purposes, because you'd never want an entry level person likely who also has 10 years of managerial experience. But to give you a sense of that's how the hiring manager is thinking about the role, your question then for yourself is, how would I score my proficiency on each of these? And if the hiring manager is looking for a level 4 proficiency and you deem yourself as a 1 or 2, there is your gap that you have to realize that you are needing to close before you would be potentially the ideal person to fill that role. This isn't something to beat yourself up about. This is when you get real honest about how big the gap is between where you are and where you want to go. And this is what's going to help you develop that real serious development roadmap to get you from here to there. So one of the examples I would like to use is if you're a couple of years out of college, let's say you're 25 years old, and your dream is by 40 to be a VP, of that marketing role. Let's say a gaming marketing manager at Microsoft, somewhere in the Xbox world. So right now, your proficiency level on a lot of things may just be in the 2 or 3 range. And to get to VP by 40, you're going to have to be at the 4s and 5s across a lot of proficiency levels or skills. So this is the method that you're going to use to say, okay, these are my gaps. This is how big they are. And now the question becomes, how am I going to close these gaps? And let's be very specific about how we want to do that. So the third resource in that ultimate career development toolkit is a career development plan 1-pager. So I look at this as pulling together all of the work that we've just done on what your priorities are, what types of positions and roles can achieve the career aspirations that you have, and understanding the gaps that you have between where you are today and where you would like to get. So let me step through this in a bit more detail. So the upper left corner is writing out what your ultimate career aspiration is. And I really want to encourage you to do this, because writing it down versus just letting it sit in the back of your mind is very helpful. You're going to come back to this plan time and again, and seeing it written down is going to remind you of that North Star that you're looking for. Maybe not just the one step away from where you are right now. Next is, it's an important step to write out what your key accomplishments have been in the last 6 to 12 months, with regard to your work skills. And we start with accomplishments because our brains are very easy to go to all of the challenges that we have, or all of the negatives that may have happened. So making sure you start off in the positive headspace of, I have done these things. And if you can, it's so much better to have something that's more outcome based, or what skills you have improved on, as opposed to, I wrote a report, um, I did some research. So thinking through accomplishments such as, I improved my presentation skills, I have learned better managerial skills, I have done X, Y, and Z. It could be a technical accomplishment, or it could be a leadership skill that you've been working on, but outline them there. Okay, the next section starts to become those capabilities summary. So both strengths and development needs. So this is where, if we go back to that last page and we think about the gaps, there could be places where that role that you're looking for wants a proficiency 4 and you've got a 5, or whatever the number is, you are higher than what the hiring manager is ultimately looking for. Those are definitely going to be some of the strengths that you'd be able to bring to set you apart from others that are competing for that role. So you really want to identify your strengths. And at least speaking to the women out there in the audience, we're generally pretty terrible at like tooting our own horn. And so this is the time, this is just for you. Write down the things that you really are good at, and don't skimp here, because again, it's important to identify these, because we sometimes sell ourselves too short. And I think that's often why we may not get the recognition, the upward mobility that we deserve. So take a minute and make sure that you follow through on that step. Okay, the development needs. That is going to come from the work that you just did in terms of looking at the gaps and how big those gaps are. So this is where, write down what those elements are. If you want to be a VP by 40, you're going to need to not only manage people, but potentially manage other managers and manage a big team. That's a very big gap from currently not managing anyone, being an individual contributor. So as you identify the development need of have the capability to effectively lead a large team, that might be the development need. That turns into that objective. All right, so your objective is to build the skill to be able to effectively lead and manage a large team. What steps are you specifically going to take to go from where you are now to where you want to be? Likely, obviously, one of the steps is going to be looking for roles that have the manager responsibility as a key element to that. But it's a tricky one, because very often folks want to know that you've managed others before they give you that role. So very often that ends up being an opportunity to grow from within where you currently work, because you already have the functional expertise of what you and your peers do. And if your manager were to move on, you can put yourself in a spot to be ready to take over that role. Now, as you're waiting for that, are there other ways that you can develop that skill? Do you have, contingent staff or temporary staff that you are leading? Are you leading virtual teams? Are you Is there an opportunity to help onboard new employees? Are there opportunities to become a leader in your community, whether it's through, a PTA, PTSA, or through volunteer opportunities? So there's lots of different ways that you can develop the leadership and managerial supervisory skills without on-the-job training. But this is the time for you to really brainstorm what those actions are that you want to take. Now, one more minute on this because I think it's important at this point to talk about the difference between a goal and just a wish or a dream. Many of us want to have these, we have this idyllic vision in our head, but a goal is something that has a very clear outcome. It has a time element to it. It has a realization that there's likely going to be obstacles in our way. And with that, you develop strategies to get around those obstacles. And you create action to overcome those obstacles and to proceed ahead. And you continually update and reflect on the progress that you've made. And if you're not making enough progress using one set of tactics and strategies, it's time to change course and try something different. That could be going even harder on the strategies you've been using, or again, changing course and trying a different path. So I really want you to consider, is that VP at 40 a dream, or is it your goal? And you'll know the difference if you are, again, just dreaming about it, but not putting any action towards it. And you don't have to take action every minute of the day, but if you are dead set on getting there to 40, by 40, what are you going to do in the next 2 to 3 years to get from a proficiency 2 to a 3 on a couple of things? And then the next couple of years, et cetera, et cetera. This is your opportunity to really plot out how you're going to develop those skills with very specific and tactical and time-based outcomes. All right, enough of my maybe stump speech on that. So as you're developing all of these ideas, now you're going to write down what are those potential next roles that are, this is my definition of short term, 0 to 2 years, and longer term, many people may have, 5 to 15 in here. But start that brainstorming of what are the roles or responsibilities that you would like to be in to fulfill this plan that you have. Lastly, on here, it's always important to think through your stable of mentors or sponsors. And there is a difference between mentors and sponsors. And I think we need both. Mentors are really someone who can help you with a functional task, right? Someone who knows Excel really well if you need that in your job, and they can help you learn a particular task. They may be at the same level as you, higher, lower, but they're there for you to learn a more specific outcome from. Sponsors, on the other hand, tend to have access to rooms that you don't. They are often in a more senior position, and the sponsors are going to be folks that speak well about you when you're not in the room. They have an opportunity to highlight your name when a new position or key project comes up that has some visibility. And so these are folks that are really, maybe even unwittingly, really helping you in your career. So the question for you is, who are your mentors? Who are your sponsors? And if you sit down to fill this out and you can't think of any, that becomes part of your development objective. Create your stable of mentors and sponsors. And so on the sponsor side, that may be a little bit harder than, asking someone for help with Excel in my example. But again, there's so many different ways that you can develop that. How can you develop a stronger relationship with more of the who you deem as leaders, or at least have the the ear of leaders in the organization? How do you build your credibility within teams so that your brand stands for itself? Are you taking the opportunity to have, one-on-ones with leadership when they have those open door opportunities for you? So very often, something we often forget is if you're in a company that has a fair bit of movement. So Microsoft, huge company, it was very common to have people move within the team every, 3, 4, 5 years. So when you start off working with one group of folks, they splinter off, and before you know it, you know people in all different organizations. So you may have worked with someone, built a great relationship with them in the past, and now they're in another part of the company and have a different level of influence. And so reaching out to them and reminding them of who you are, what you can bring to a team, and letting them know that you're interested in doing something that aligns with where they are can sometimes be all the jogging of that person's memory so that they can become a sponsor and start advocating for you in the world that they are in now. Okay, so to somewhat wrap up where we have been, this is the checklist that I would love for you all to take a screenshot of. And again, really think through if you've got a goal or a wish, a dream. If you've got a goal, this is the checklist I want you to be working through. So the first on here is reflect, and I didn't put it in these terms as I was just talking about it, but when I think about reflecting, the question I ask folks is, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you score your current job satisfaction? 10 being the highest. Very often I'll hear, 5, 6, 7. Every now and then it's a 2, and it's I need to get the heck out of this job. So my follow-on question is, envision what would a 10 look and feel like? What kind of a role would end up being a 10 for you? That becomes some of that brainstorm of the things that are important. And that turns into step number 2, that brainstorm. What matters most to you? Prioritize those top 6 characteristics. Identify up to 3 new roles. They could be different professions as opposed to, the same profession, but at 3 different companies. However you want to go at it. I've shown you a method to score each role and look at the weighting of how they each stack up against each other. Then we talked about thinking like a hiring manager so that you can determine the gaps, both positive and negative. We talked about then building your plan of how you want to close those gaps and when. And then we just talked about your network. So I think of it as a stable of mentors and sponsors. The more folks you have on your side, I think easier it's going to be to land that role. And then lastly is monitoring your progress and adjusting as time goes on. If something isn't working, what are you going to change about it so that it is inevitable that you achieve your goals? All right. Well, I want to say thank you so very much for watching this webinar. And I hope you learned something that will help you get from here to happy in your career journey. I want to offer, if you are intrigued by this brief webinar and you want to really dive in and do the work that's required to really get along that path, I want to invite you to an upcoming 3-day boot camp that I will be hosting. And the dates are below. It's October 28th, 30th, and November 2nd. It's completely free. There's the QR code. I would love for you to go out there and register now. I realize that during work days can be quite challenging for many individuals. So on October 28th and 30th, that's a Monday and Wednesday, I'm making 2 times available each day, 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. So you would pick one of those 2 times on the Monday and Wednesday. And then the wrap up is on Saturday, November 2nd at 9 a.m. So I would love for you to come join me. I recently hosted this 3-day boot camp. We had quite a few folks attend, and the brainstorms that come up in the session, the conversations, the discussions of different challenges that individuals are having. The conversations were really robust and super helpful. And there were several new connections made between folks that I think are going to mentor each other. So any of those outcomes, I think, are a huge, valuable use of your time. And so you might ask, what's different about the boot camp versus the last 40 minutes or so? So here's the 3 days. Each day is a deep dive into one of the sections we just discussed. And in each of the day, I've got an additional tool that I will be introducing to the bootcamp attendees. I personally was certified for coaching through the Life Coach School, and the teachings from the Life Coach School have been really transformational for me, and I'm excited to bring that to more folks. So the tools I've listed there, they're called the Model, Massive Action, and Monday Hour One. At the end of each day, there is homework, because what would a boot camp be without exercising our muscles and really putting some energy and effort in? And so here's an example. I think that was at the end of day one. The homework was for folks to write their ideal job description and to start researching those 3 to 5 roles that we would use then on day two when it got to scoring and looking at alternatives. And then lastly, I am offering a more premium solution. So I'm calling it Boot Camp Plus. So it's the same boot camp session, but also comes with one 50-minute one-on-one coaching session with me. That's $125, usually $175. So I think that's about a 28% discount. What we found through the previous boot camps was that these individuals had done a lot of work. We had gotten to know each other quite well. And at the end of the boot camp, they really needed at least one dedicated session to put it all together, ask some points that they may not have felt comfortable doing in a larger forum. And so I really want to see all of you succeed. And I find that having at least one session afterwards can really solve that. Okay, I think. And then also just a quick point that I am predominantly a one-on-one executive business coach. And right now I am offering 6 months, so that's 12 sessions for $1,500. If you would like to schedule a complimentary consultation to see if a coaching package with me would be a good solution for you. Again, feel free to snap a photo of this QR code, go schedule a one-on-one consult with me, and I would love to meet you in real life and hear about what's going on with you and figure out how to get you in a better spot. Okay, I think with that, that is the end of my LinkedIn Live. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you have learned something. I hope you've been inspired to take some more action. If you have been frustrated with the role that you're currently in and maybe not having a lot of success getting where you want, it can be really challenging out there. I know I've got a number of friends and clients who have been struggling with finding that next role for, in some cases, a fairly significant amount of time. So sometimes something like this boot camp or even just this masterclass can really reinvigorate you to give it another shot, get back out there, take some of the tips and steps that we've outlined, and and get yourself moving forward again, because doing the same thing will likely yield the same results, unfortunately. Okay, with that, I think we are all done. I would love to hear any comments or questions in the LinkedIn live chat, and I hope to see you all real soon. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.